So if you've been following the national headlines, everyone's been talking about a housing crash. But here's a twist. Santa Clara County actually hasn't had a single month of year-over-year single-family home price decline. So while condos in San Francisco are decreasing, homes in Silicon Valley keep climbing. So why does this one slice of the Bay Area keep defining the headline? What does it mean if you're looking to buy here in the Bay Area? So stay tuned, because the reality of this so-called housing crash will surprise you. National headlines, they love the word crash, and you've probably seen it. Sellers in San Francisco are cutting their list prices, there's a bunch of unsold homes in Oakland piling up, and buyers are no longer buying second properties, let's say in Napa or Lake Tahoe. So put together, it does look like the whole Bay Area housing market is tipping over. But when you pull the numbers for Santa Clara County, the pattern actually flips. Prices aren't sliding down the way you'd expect, but instead, they've been on a steady climb month after month for more than a year. That gap between the story that people see on TV versus the reality on the ground here in Santa Clara County is what confuses most buyers. So if you're only hearing about price cuts in San Francisco, you'll walk into homes in Santa Clara County expecting deals, expecting maybe some kind of clearance sale. But in reality, that's not what's been happening. So right now, the county has about a month and a half of inventory, which means homes that are listed correctly are still moving fast. That means there's a tight supply, and it feeds straight into the price increases. I'll give you a real look at what that feels like. Imagine a buyer who's been watching all the bubble burst coverage. So they're hopeful, they set a budget, and then they circle Cupertino because of the good schools. They go to an open house thinking that they'll be able to make an offer under the list price. But a week later, the seller actually accepts an offer at even $400,000 over asking. That's the moment is when buyers realize Santa Clara County housing market is really in its own lane. Take this home for example in West San Jose. It's a relatively small home and it's about 1,100 square feet and it's listed about $2.3 million. But in just a week, it closed at $2.5 million with 3 offers. The reason is not every city in the Bay Area moves in sync. So San Francisco's condo towers in downtown are dealing with some investor turnover and remote work shifting housing demand. Napa's and Lake Tahoe's second home buyers are pulling back because the interest rates are still relatively high, while Oakland see waves of new listings that pile up before even the earlier listings can sell. But Santa Clara County has these deep anchors. For one, you get the artificial intelligence boom pushing companies to expand just south of Mountain View. You also have semiconductor hubs tied into San Jose's job base. Also, there's biotech offices that bring steady high-income earners to the area. So those workers, they're not watching the national doom stories. They're actually trying to get Fremont schools or buy a home along the peninsula to shorten their commute, and they're competing for a very limited pool of single-family homes. Think of Santa Clara County as a strong oak in a windstorm. All around during a windstorm, the branches will whip around, smaller plants get tossed, but that one tree holds down because the roots go deep. The roots in this example being the job, the schools, and the network of companies that keep skilled workers in this county. Yes, the branches shake, and you'll notice some shifts at the edges of the market, but ultimately the trunk will hold down. So one corner that has loosened here in Santa Clara County of the housing market is condos though, as inventory here is about 25% higher than last year. So if you're open to a townhome or a condo, you'll notice there's a lot more options. But step back into the single family home market and it's still really hot. There's multiple offer situations, limited selection, and overall just really high demand. So that mix surprises a lot of new first time home buyers. So the first question they ask is, if this county is so tight, does that mean Santa Clara County's housing market is immune to a crash? Well, the honest answer is no, because nothing is immune. But if you're looking at a housing market that is clearly more resilient, it's going to be Santa Clara County because it's incredibly strong with its great jobs, schools, and weathers, and it's very unlikely to be affected compared to even other neighborhoods just 30 miles away from this county. So the bigger question isn't whether or not a housing crash is coming, but it's whether Santa Clara County's housing market is strong enough to carry momentum into the next year's buying season, because that's where you want to focus as you're thinking about purchasing a home in late 2025 or even 2026. So that's exactly what we're going to look at next. So when you step back and look at what really drives value in this county, 2 things stand out: the jobs and the schools. The tech corridors running north from San Jose up all to Mountain View and Cupertino always bring in high incoming working professionals. We're talking about artificial intelligence research lab workers, semiconductor office workers, and biotech firm workers branching out from South San Francisco all the way down to Sunnyvale. And these employers, they're not shrinking. They're competing for skilled talent, and those employees need homes close to these offices and in school districts that match their expectations. That constant pull from the job base creates demand that doesn't let up just because mortgage rates are uncomfortable. And I'll be completely honest, yes, the rates are relatively high as we've been hitting in the 6 to 7% range. Affordability across the US is under real pressure, and in plenty of cities, that would freeze plenty of buyers out and push the inventory up. But here, even with those rates, families still line up for those Cupertino schools or for a home for that short bike ride to Mountain View offices. That's why open houses in Los Altos Hills are filled with strollers and tech badges even in the slow months. It's a profile of demand that doesn't even evaporate the way investor-heavy markets do. Now, projecting into the future, Cupertino is projected for about a 5% growth until late 2025, while Fremont's close to increasing 3.5%. But compare that to downtown San Francisco, and expected to decline 4%. So these two areas, they're less than an hour apart, yet it's two totally different trends. And this is the danger of when you only listen to the national radio talk about the housing market, because it smooths over those differences and leaves buyers thinking that the whole Bay Area is tumbling, when in reality, it's different markets in different pockets of the Bay Area. So that's the crucial difference. Volatility versus certainty. San Francisco's housing market is very driven by investor-heavy condo supply, which has been changed by remote work, downtown crime narratives, and also corporate downsizing. So you can see these are very thin anchors. But Santa Clara County leans heavily on real families, jobs, and long-term commitments to school districts and commuting patterns. That's much harder to shake loose. So when you line it all up, Santa Clara County resists this idea of a housing crash because it has a job engine that's still producing jobs, a lot of high-performing schools that a lot of families want, and also a low supply of single-family homes that seems to never have enough. So together, those hold prices steady when the surrounding markets bend. And this is where your strategy as a buyer becomes clear. So instead of watching the national averages or headlines about a housing crash, start tracking the micro market data. Check the housing forecast, check the active inventory, and drill down neighborhood by neighborhood. That's how you're gonna decide what's the right time to act here. And that's what positions you for success from this year to next year. So Santa Clara County isn't moving with the same rhythm as the rest of the Bay Area. And that's the key takeaway. The housing crash talk you keep hearing hides the truth of what this county really behaves like. Because this county behaves with its own market with strong roots in jobs, schools, and the scarcity of housing supply. So if you're trying to time a purchase, don't gamble on the headlines. In fact, track interest rate dips, pull the local comps, and watch forecasts down to the neighborhood level. So that's how you're going to find an edge here. So if you're interested about learning more about the Bay Area, subscribe below and drop your questions in the comments. And for more videos about what living in the Bay Area is like, check out more videos on my channel, and I'll see you in the next video.